Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Glad to take your comments on the Second Amendment, the Javon Belcher shooting, your comments, the reaction of the left, your reaction to some of the stuff that we've talked about. 888-589-8840. So any comments you have on the Second Amendment, gun rights, gun shootings, we'd be glad to take your calls. 888-589-8840. Just before we go to the phones, a columnist by the name of Whitlock, that's who Bob Costas was quoting. We played the Bob Costas quote yesterday. Again, he's doing the same thing, blaming guns, not the shooter. Anybody's fault but the shooter, the guy that pulled the trigger. Got to blame it on society, blame it on his upbringing, blame it on the drugs, blame it on concussions, blame it on the NFL, blame it on the gun, anything to keep from holding the guy accountable that actually made the decision to pull the trigger. And I mean, it wasn't just once. He riddled his girlfriend's body with 9 bullets. And as we talked yesterday with Mike McManus, another unaddressed dimension of this is that we know for an absolute fact that domestic violence, Mike McManus said yesterday, is 5 times higher. It is 5 times higher in cohabiting relationships than in married relationships. There is a stability in marriage relationship that does not exist in cohabiting relationships. This was a cohabiting deal. Apparently, we find out today he'd spent the night with a girlfriend. That's going to be liable to tick off the girlfriend when he comes home in the morning, having spent the night at somebody else's apartment. Easy to see how an argument could ensue. That's another thing that Mike McManus said, look, the incidence of infidelity, if you want to use that term, far, far higher in cohabiting relationships than in married relationships. And that was also a factor that was going on here. Now, here, that columnist who wrote this is out with a new accusation. This was out yesterday. I didn't have time to grab it and play it yesterday, but here is this Whitlock columnist. He's on, I think, with Roland Martin, and here's what he had to say yesterday.
Sports get so much attention, and so many people tune out the real world that I try to take advantage of the opportunities to talk about the real world when sports lends itself to that and try to open people's eyes. I did not go as far as I would like to go, because my thoughts on the NRA and America's gun culture, I believe the NRA is the new KKK.
Wow.
And that the arming of so many black youth and loading up our communities with drugs and then just having an open shooting gallery is the work of people that, obviously don't have our best interest. And I think it's obvious if you travel abroad and travel to countries where they actually have some legitimate gun laws, we don't have to have what we have here in America, where people think a gun somehow enhances their liberty and where people think that a gun somehow makes them safer. It just doesn't. A gun turns some kids listening to music into a murder scene. And, if you don't have a gun, you drive home. Kids are listening to some loud music. You don't like it. That annoys me. You go home and complain to your wife. When you have a gun, you open fire potentially and take the life of a child.
Now, John Lott's got a good column that was on Fox News yesterday about this whole thing. And he points out that about 2 million times a year, guns are used defensively. They are used for purposes of self-protection. Every one of those 2 million individuals that uses a handgun or some kind of weapon in self-defense is a potential victim. They could be a homicide victim were it not for the ability to protect themselves. That's 2 million times a year. I was talking with Rob Gardner, my director, earlier this morning, and we were talking about the fact that the media now is playing up all of these instances of gun violence, and it may be because President Obama is getting ready to make a move on guns or make a move on ammunition or something of that sort. They're going to come after our guns, and our gun rights they can't come directly at the Second Amendment, but they'll try to do everything they can to come around the corner and deprive us of our ability to defend ourselves. And so you're going to see a lot of this now where these instances of deaths by gun are going to be highlighted and magnified. And Lott makes the point, this guy says, look, it's an illusion to think it makes you safer, but Lott makes the point that murder rates rise when guns are banned. Why is that? Because people can't defend themselves, and people know it. The bad guys know that the law-abiding people will obey the law, and they won't have guns, and that makes them sitting ducks for violence. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to Daniel in Little Rock, Arkansas. Daniel, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Well, I just want to make a quick comment. I think with the politics today, political issues, and also economical issues, I think it's very important that families have firearms and ammunition to protect themselves, whether it be from we go into some kind of depression and we don't have, there's a lot of people who are, put in a desperate need and they go and rob a house and someone doesn't have a gun to protect themselves, or, something along the lines of we may not have as easily access to guns in the future or ammunition. I think it's really important to kind of see that in the next coming years, because I think that we are vulnerable to a lot of different things, and that we should be prepared for that, for self-protection from either for our family or for our nation if we have to.
All right, good call, Daniel. I appreciate that. And the city attorney in San Bernardino, to illustrate what you're saying, San Bernardino said to lay off 80 police officers because they're broke, they're bankrupt because of public sector pensions. They've got all these obligations to pay policemen that are retired, so they can't pay the policemen that are working. So they have gutted their police force. They have homicide rate is twice this year what it was last year in San Bernardino. I've got family that lives there, so I'm naturally concerned about it. And you know what the advice of the city attorney was? Lock your doors and load your guns. We can't protect you. We don't have enough cops. You are on your own. So San Bernardino turning into the wild, wild west. And our last caller saying, look, you might be prepared in case things go south as they're headed. You might want to be prepared to protect yourself and your family. Let's go to Fred, Lafayette, Indiana. Fred, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Brian, I just want to tell you I appreciate you and your show, particularly your biblical worldview. My main comment was those localities and states where they've specifically prohibited firearms in worship centers. That seems like a violation of the First Amendment as well as the Second Amendment.
Yeah, because of that, you're trampling on their free exercise of religion in particular?
Right. If it's specifically targeting houses of worship,
yeah,
that to me seems like a First Amendment violation. So.
Yeah. All right. That's a good call, Fred. I appreciate that. Thank you for that observation. And again, as the world just gets increasingly unsafe, why should the people who fear God be the only ones that aren't allowed to protect themselves, that are left as sitting ducks for the bad guys? Same deal. Just like the hostile Indian tribes knew where to get sitting ducks between 11 and noon at church on Sunday. I mean, if believers can't carry guns to church and the bad guys know it, then what better place to strike, because you'll feel like you can strike with impunity. Let's go to Sarah, Bella Vista, Arkansas. Sarah, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call. I just love your show. And
Thank you.
Just wanted to say how it's funny how it seems like a lot of people on the left have no principle behind their statements. And on one topic, like abortion, it's their right, their choice. They can choose what they want to do. But then when it comes to bearing arms or gun rights, it's no, you can't have a choice, because we can't trust people to make the right decision. And if they have a gun, they might be tempted to do something wrong. So it's like there's no
consistency in their worldview, is there?
Yeah, they just get to choose whatever they want to, whatever's convenient for their stance, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I love that about the Christian worldview, is it's solid and it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate that call, Sarah, and thank you for that. And there's hypocrisy there, too. There's this inconsistency. Sarah pointing out, hey, the left is all about pro-choice until it comes to guns. And then they want to deprive you of your choice. Now, you don't have to own a gun if you don't want to. You don't have to have a gun in your house if you don't want to. You don't have to get a concealed carry permit if you don't want to. But what the left isn't interested in you having your freedom to choose. They want to take that choice away from you. They want to tell you what size of soft drink you can have. And they want to tell you can have salt in your food and how much sodium you can have in your food, and whether you can have trans fats in your food. But when it comes to the life of a baby, oh no, we got to protect a woman's right to choose in a circumstance like this. And there's also a tremendous amount of hypocrisy. You can think of Bob Costas out there talking about how guns are terrible, guns are bad, people shouldn't have guns. Everywhere he goes, there are armed guards to protect him. That's why it's just blatantly, egregiously, offensively hypocritical. Because he goes to an NFL stadium, you got armed guards at the gate, you got armed guards in the parking lot, you got armed guards in the corridor, you got armed guards standing outside the booth, you have armed guards that walk him to his transportation. I mean, he's surrounded by people that have guns. And he's got the nerve to go out there and tell us that we don't have the right to use guns for self-protection when he depends on that every single place he goes. I just find that hypocrisy just absolutely nauseating. And I like Bob Costas. He's a bright guy, but that is nauseating hypocrisy. Let's go to Chuck, Birmingham, Alabama. Chuck, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say that Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman got killed with a steak knife.
There you go.
We might as well ban knives also, and that's all I got to say.
All right, Chuck. Well, thank you. And see, that's the point. Javon Belcher, 6'2", 228 pounds. He did not even need a weapon to take the life of his girlfriend. He could have strangled her to death. He could have beat her to death. He's way bigger, way stronger, didn't even need a weapon. You know, people get killed with table lamps all the time. They get killed with fireplace pokers. They get killed like Ron Goldman and Nicole Simpson with a steak knife. So what are we going to start banning table lamps? We're going to start banning fireplace pokers. People fall and hit their heads on a coffee table. We're going to start banning coffee tables. We're going to ban steak knives now because they can be used as a weapon. And again, that's what happens when you get your focus off of the individual, the human being who is morally responsible, and turn your attention to the inanimate object that was simply used as a tool of evil and malice. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back after the news. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Focal Point on AFR Talk.